Welcome back to Invest Global. Today we're going to be digging deep into copper, especially the current supply and demand situation in Q2 of 2021, as well as kind of a macro outlook. We'll be going over some of the basic kind of building your thesis, identifying this narrative. We talk about all these things with any different global investment sector in the video link down below in the description called Global Investment Framework. Definitely go check that out if you're just curious on how to structure an investment thesis. More information about identifying narratives, whether it be in the blockchain space, whether it be commodities, emerging markets, all topics we talk about on this channel. We'll also be looking at the charts for some technical analysis just on copper futures, as well as just overall charts, and then some opportunities as far as, okay, what are you going to do? Are you going to buy the physical bullion? Well, with copper, no, because it's not a monetary metal. When you're looking at things like gold or silver, for example, popping up on this site, what you're looking at is to ideally get access to the bullion. So hold physical bullion, ideally custodying it around the world, having it in multiple different vaults, obviously depending on your risk tolerance. And besides that, if you want to have kind of upside, at least a little bit more exposure to the upside, if you believe that we're kind of leading up to this bull market, this kind of a super cycle in commodities, especially things like a gold, silver, copper, lithium, uranium, kind of all commodities that I've talked a lot about. You can definitely form a thesis with these, and we'll talk about this more and more. And then lastly, kind of an opportunity that I see in this space. But first, let's kick it off. Every day, this is basically how I structure my in kind of investment. I guess is a very, very basic overview is first thing I do, check the dollar index. Second thing I do, check the 10-year yield. Third thing I do, check daily metal prices. You can track me every day. This is what I'm doing. And hey, I'm not saying you have to do this. This is just my strategy. I'm always open. Anything in my life, as far as business goes, as far as most things in life, I'm looking to iterate and improve. So I'm always looking to optimize, always looking to get a better edge. But I really find that going on these kind of macro indicators that I use, looking at commodities, because you have to understand commodities are really what's underlying every single thing in the real world, whether it's emerging markets, building new cities around the world, innovating with electric vehicle technology, building 5G equipment. All of these things require commodities. And a lot of these commodities like cobalt, like copper, are hitting these highs. And that's really the question of today is, okay, do you want to be buying copper at these all-time highs? I mean, this is where we sit right now. We've had a little bit of a dip. Obviously, this is on the weekly chart, so each of these individual candles represent 1 week. You have to keep that in mind. And this chart dates all the way back to 1989. If we go here on the historical copper metals charts on macrotrends.net, you can see all the way back to 1959. So all the links we talk about throughout this video will be linked down below in the description. If you have any questions throughout this, just let me know in the comments. Let's dive right into it. So as I was saying is, I start my day off with this. These are kind of the macro indicators. I'm always open to iterate and improve because there are always different places to track this information. I always try and, really look at the Dixie, really, the dollar index is basically what the Dixie is referring to, and then look at the 10-year yield because everything is kind of in these contextual things. The reason you look at the dollar is because of the global reserve currency. The reason you look at the 10-year yield is because if you understand how the Treasury and the Fed works, which if you don't, watch my video called the Yield Curve Control, the Treasury versus the Fed, inflation versus deflation, then you can understand how that's kind of a macro indicator you should be using. So if we look here, these are just kind of the top metals they have listed. If we're just looking by price, it's all relative, obviously, just to the supply and what they're measuring by. So, that's something you have to take in mind. It's not like, you see that $1 for a pound of aluminum is cheaper than, $19 for a pound of cobalt. No. It's all relative, right? So you have to keep that in mind with commodities. If you're a complete beginner, let me know in the comments and maybe I'll make a video on like a beginner's guide to commodity investing. It's really one of my, I would say commodities, blockchain, and emerging markets are kind of my 3 favorite investment sectors, but I really try not to be emotional about this. That I just see the most upside in these. I mean, the stock market and most equities are extremely overvalued. Obviously, the stocks that I'm exposed to, for example, for copper, you would be playing the stock market. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be the American stock market. That's why I'm talking about emerging markets, specifically copper mines. So, and we'll get to that later. Chile is really the top mining place for most copper. You can see the majority of these top mines are in Chile, as well as this project that we'll be talking about near the end. That's why we provide timestamps throughout this video, so you can check all those out. So the point here is in 2018, the trade war between the U.S. and China put the boots on copper demand. the COVID-19 mine closures and abandoned expansion plans crimped supply. We made a bold prediction that copper supply is not going to be able to keep up with the demand in the long term. So you have to keep this in mind, guys. So copper has a steady demand, right? Copper is being used in houses everywhere. One of the things we will talk about in this video is an alternative to copper, and it's not really an alternative. This is like, you look up, okay, what's the number one alternative to copper? I purposely talk about that in the global investment framework video. Is whenever you form a thesis, specifically seek out disconfirming evidence. So you want to look at the opposing side of the argument and really study them. Don't just brush them away, because so many people do this. So many people, they have this bias, they have this opinion in their head, Bitcoin's going to be the best, but then they don't look at the opposing side. They don't listen to people like Peter Schiff. They don't listen to people like Harry Dent. Whether or not you agree with them or not, the point is to kind of extract the vital information of what their thesis is on the antithesis side, so you can find a synthesis. So your thesis, you match that with an antithesis, and then you form the synthesis, which is the new thesis. It's an ongoing cycle. So you have to keep that in mind with investing, is you really, really should be focusing on building this framework, because it doesn't matter if you're applying it today in 2021 or you're applying it in 2030 or you were applying it in the dot-com boom. All of these times, as long as you have this framework in place, you can apply it and act rationally and logically in the markets and not have emotion affect you as much. Obviously, you always will have some emotion. We are human after all. But I mean, the best thing you can do is build a strategic plan to execute, build a framework, and really stick with that in the market. So this is what I was talking about with the alternatives. But as I was saying back here, let's see. So I would agree with this, that we will not keep up with this demand. As I was saying, there's this steady demand, but the supply is very, very crunched. You have the majority of these mines in you could say emerging markets countries. Some of them are a little bit more developed, but overall, it's not like we're mining a ton of copper in Canada or United States. I mean, there is a mine in the U.S. I'm pretty sure it's in Arizona, if I remember correctly, on one of the top mines. Let me just check this to make sure. Let's see. Yes, Morenci, USA. That's in Arizona. Okay, so point is you look at the supply and demand situation. You can't just focus too much on supply. You can't just focus too much on demand. You have to balance the two, and then you have to take in the narrative accounts. Okay, what's the narrative? Well, Biden's planning for this electric vehicle future, the green energy deal. You have copper use in housing. You have kind of the steady demand, similar to lithium, except lithium's a little bit different. I've laid out my thesis around this. Let's return to this article. So even with expansions at the existing mines in the ramp up of the relatively few new copper mines like Cobre Panama, Radomriotomic, and Toquepala, I apologize if I just completely botched those names, it will not be enough to meet the onslaught of demand that is coming from China as it continues to modernize and urbanize. And electric vehicles, which use 3 times as much copper as regular ones. In 2016, Chinese automakers sold 28 million cars. If China follows through on its promise to go 100% electric, that would mean what? Okay, that's 2,380,000,000 kilograms. Wow, of copper. That's insane. So at the current production rate of 20 million tons a year, that's 119 years worth of copper. Wow. So just to produce enough copper for the electric cars in China. So this is crazy, guys. I mean, when you start looking at, okay, like what percentage of the population of drivers, so not what percentage of the total world drives electric vehicles, because it's tiny then, because you're taking into account people that aren't even driving. So you have to go, okay, what percentage of the people that are driving electric? This is around, it's like 3%, something tiny. It's a little bit higher than 3% now, but just earlier this year, it was around 3%. And it's like, okay, if we double that, we don't have enough copper supply. So the whole point of Biden's plan for this kind of green energy future leads to this conclusion where it's like, okay, maybe you don't want to invest in what individual electric car company will win the race, but rather you want to invest in what each of these car companies needs to run the race, right? So why are major mining companies so intent on securing new supplies of copper? Quite simply, they're running out of ore. As we've reported, without new capital investments, Commodities Research Unit, CRU, predicts global copper mined production will drop from the current 20 million tons below the 12 MT by 2034, leading to a supply shortfall more than 15 MT. Over 200 copper mines are expected to run out of ore before 2035, with not enough new mines in the pipeline to take their place. Some of the largest copper mines are seeing their reserves dwindle. They are having dramatically slow production due to the major capital intensive projects to move operations from open pit to underground. Okay, so this is very important. So, for example, here in Indonesia, the world's second largest copper mine, obviously, let's see. So, do they have it listed as the second largest? Yeah, okay. So, you see, this is the thing, guys. Whenever you're researching an investment sector, that's why I'm using multiple different sites. I'm not just going like all based on like investing.com or whatever. Some people just get their research from like Bloomberg. I like to go all these different sources. Like let's take in all these factors. Let's combine fundamental analysis. Let's combine, things like supply and demand, things like the overall narrative. Let's look at the market sentiment. Let's look at what people are talking about. Let's look at the charts. Let's hop over here, which we will do in a second, and then combine all these, just like I talked about in the blockchain space. You have to combine on-chain analysis, which you really only have in the blockchain space because you're using the blockchain. We don't have a blockchain for copper, but ideally we do down the road. Then you're combining sentimental, fundamental, and technical analysis. I have a video on that specifically for blockchain research down below in the description called How to Do Your Own Research. You can go check that out. Okay, so that's pretty much all for this article. I think we're going to move on here. This is very, very important because this is basically talking about the uses of copper. So this is actually quite interesting. I'm back here in the States. I was, in Turkey for 3 months before this. Basically, have been traveling the past couple of years, researching emerging markets, real estate, different investment opportunities. Back here in the States, had to fly back for a funeral, see some family, and then I'm shooting over to Tbilisi, Georgia, to see Armenia and Ukraine, look at some banking opportunities as well as some real estate options there. And here in Iowa, where I'm from, this town actually has like a mini version of the Statue of Liberty that's all made out of copper. And it's kind of interesting because it's like, man, that I wish it's interesting to think like, okay, if we were just to sell that statue, this is the price volatility. If you would have bought that statue in the bottom here in March, or if you would have bought some mining stocks, especially then, you would have had this incredible asymmetric upside. Let's just look at this on the charts real quick. If you would have, commodities tradings, like if you're doing leverage trading, it's very, very complex. I probably wouldn't recommend if you're a beginner investor to do commodities trading, especially like leverage trading. I would recommend if you're interested in this narrative, identify some key companies and you'll get more upside than this, because you have to understand if this is the upside of the underlying commodities, the companies that are producing these commodities get a higher upside, okay? So you have to take that all into account. But 141% gain on just that statue I was talking about. So kind of interesting to think of. Let me know in the comments if you know of anything that has copper or, if you've collected copper. I don't know what your thoughts are just around copper in general. So let's get into this article from geology.com. Again, everything will be linked down below in the description. So copper was one of the first metals ever extracted and used by humans, and it has made vital contributions to sustaining and improving society since the dawn of civilization. Copper was first used in coins and ornaments starting around 8,000 BC and about 5,500 BC. Copper tools helped civilizations emerge from the Stone Age. The discovery that copper alloyed with tin produced bronze marked the beginning of the Bronze Age at about 3000 BC. So there's also these things on copper versus COVID-19. But again, since this is a macro outlook, I kind of prefer to, COVID is obviously, it's a short-term thing. If someone's watching this 20 years from now, COVID's going to be this kind of weird blip in history, in my opinion. We probably will have something like it. Yes, there will probably be variants. Yes, it will have long-term effects. But as far as like a historical time period, I would say that the max that this will... In the short term, I would say, if you're doing a timeline in history, and let's say we're watching this video in 2040, I would say COVID-19, 3 years at max in the timeline, that things happen within the COVID-19. When something like this happens, when it's like a year from now, and let's say or 2 years from now, and there's like not that many cases, people will still look back on it, but it's not going to constantly be affecting other timelines. You have to understand that. So like maybe something else happens in the world and then we call it, the China-US, I don't know, the China-US war. Maybe we go to war with China. Not saying that's going to happen, but you get my point, right? I hope you understand, you're not missing the forest through the trees. The point is these kind of short-term things when you're looking at macroeconomics, you do want to take them into account as factors, but you want to focus on zooming out on the chart. So we can just look at the 1 year chart, but the point is we look at the 30-year chart, the max chart. So back to normal. A little rant over about COVID and the macro situation. And again, this is not a political opinion. This is nothing. Obviously, I think COVID is a real thing. I'm not against or for anything with COVID. I'm not one of these people out here spreading these crazy ideas. I like to look at things from kind of a bird's eye view and just go, okay, let's be rational about this. Let's be logical. Let's try and find a narrative. There's no point in getting all worked up about COVID or getting all worked up about these different things. Whether you're for or against it, it really shouldn't be a political thing. Really, it should be a biological thing, in my opinion. It's kind of insane that it's gotten political, but let's return back here. So let's see. So we talked about these different things. The history of copper, the Bronze Age, and then in the United States, a piece of what is believed to be a copper bracelet was found in a Native American burial on the coastal plain of Georgia in 2017. By the way, where I'm heading is not Georgia in the United States, it's Georgia, the easternmost country in Europe, like Tbilisi, Georgia, right on the Black Sea. So the burial was a cremation dated roughly 3,500 years ago. The copper contained trace elements that linked to its geological deposits in the Great Lakes region. These discoveries suggested a long-term distance trade connection between Georgia and the Great Lakes region. The greater distance than was ever known before. Copper is easily stretched, molded, and shaped, is resistant to corrosion, and conducts heat and electricity efficiently. As a result, copper was important to early humans and continues to be a material of choice for a variety of domestic, industrial, and high technology applicants today. So this is how we use copper. This is basically the breakdown. So you can see, I see this shifting. This is during 2019. Obviously, these charts are a little bit hard to get, to be quite honest, because it's not like you can track literally where every single copper goes. Copper is typically wholesaled, and then the wholesalers sell it out to construction companies, blah, blah, blah. You get the point. And that's where they get these numbers is from the wholesaler. Who are the individual companies they're selling it to? Typically, the wholesalers are in a category, so you can kind of categorize these things, but these are never exact numbers, right? These are kind of, again, macro indicators. So machinery, 7%, consumer products, 10%, transportation equipment, 20%, EV, electrical and electronics, 20%, and then building and construction, 43%. Now, moving forward, what would you guess? Do you think building construction would increase or decrease in copper demand? That question is left up to you. That's something that you should research on. I would tell you my opinion, which is not something that you should take as fact. I think it will decrease out of this pie because I think electric vehicles and 5G equipment especially will take a majority of this pie because that's really where we're moving towards. I do think we will find other I think, for housing, I don't think there's a proper like when we talk about this article, I'll talk about this a bit deeper, but I really don't see this as like an alternative for cars is the point. So potentially, there could be some alternatives for housing structure, especially with smart homes, all these different kind of innovations down the road. But I think for electric vehicles, specifically for that trend, you are going to need an increase in copper. And specifically supply. Otherwise, you're going to have a supply crunch, which will lead to a supply, not a supply. So you will have a supply crunch, which will lead to a price increase. And typically, I mean, if it's a really big price crunch, it's in proportion to the price increase, right? It's all kind of a balancing act. So due to geological availability, emerging technologies, and industry innovation, copper will continue to contribute to society's sustainable development goals. As global copper use continues to rise, meeting this demand will require additional copper mining and recycling resources. So this is the actual availability long term. So this is very, very important to take into account. So the future availability of minerals is based on the concept of reserves and resources. Reserves are deposits that have been discovered, evaluated, and assessed to be profitable. Resources are far larger and include reserves, discovered and potentially profitable deposits, and undiscovered deposits predicted based on preliminary geological surveys. Copper is naturally present in the Earth's crust. So global copper reserves are estimated 870 million tons. And by the way, guys, the reason I'm reading this is because, I kind of prefer to consume information multiple ways. So I prefer to read it, I prefer to listen to it, and then I also prefer to discuss it. So I discuss it with friends, I discuss it with business partners, and I also like to listen to these things through auditory. So what I recommend, if you're on YouTube and you're seeing this and you're like, man, this is this long video, I'm interested in copper, get YouTube Premium. And I don't make any money off this, by the way. I know it stinks. Some people don't want to support YouTube, but get YouTube Premium and you can lock your phone. You don't have to look at the screen. You can just listen to this video over again. So if some of these concepts that I've been talking about have kind of slipped your mind, a good way to compound information basically in your head, this kind of an aside from copper investing, is to really focus down on, okay, how can I increase my education. So how can I increase the amount of information I'm consuming? But it's not all about the information, right? The other part is comprehension. So try and compound that information. So if you're taking notes on something like this or other, investment theses around copper, well, you should listen to it. You should watch it. You should discuss it. Discussing it really compounds that knowledge. And overall, it's ideally you discuss it in person, by the way. There is, you can join like our Telegram group chat and we can discuss this in further detail on the chat, but ideally you're discussing it at minimum over like something like Zoom, right? So let's dive in here. So global copper reserves are estimated at 870 million tons by the United States Geological Survey, UGS, in 2020. The annual copper demand is 28 million tons. These copper resources are estimated to exceed 5,000 million tons. Wow. USGS 2014 and 2017. So you can see what's kind of going on here, this breakdown. I won't bore you too much here, but you get the point. I will have this link down below in the description. I hope you kind of understand what's going on here. I will read this little piece on the recycling because it is kind of important. So copper recycling, because this is something, growing up in Iowa, I actually realized, when I was younger, really, really young, I worked for like a construction company. And I did like my first 3 summers basically in high school, just doing concrete construction on the weekends. And then I ended up working for like a home builder just because I'm so curious about all these different things. And I specifically remember, we would do these kind of like home remodels and we would scrap the copper pipes, and in one of my jobs, sometimes on like a fun day would be collect all the, all the different metals, all the tin, all the aluminum, all the copper, bring them to a junkyard, and then you get that kind of price, and this is where the recycling goes because, that person, obviously it's used copper. So then you give it to them, they melt it down, they sell it, and that's kind of an ongoing cycle. So it is kind of interesting to get a micro view of it when you're younger, just even learning through experience, or just hearing about it. Like what I just said, even if you've never seen a junkyard that accepts copper or dropped off copper to junkyard, there's people that literally just do that. They drive around and they try and pick up these like metals, and then sell them at wholesale. There's like some people make a living off that. But kind of that whole supply chain aspect is very interesting. So anyways, copper recycling plays an important role in copper availability since today's primary copper is tomorrow's recycled metal. The recovery and recycling of copper also helps to satisfy the increasing demand and to build a sustainable future for future generations. During the last decade, more than 30% of annual copper use came from recycled sources. Future innovative policies and technologies should continue to contribute to resource efficiency in mining primary copper and recycling secondary copper. So that's very, very important. You have to understand that there is, like, by buying a house, that is kind of you're kind of indexed on commodities, right? The things you need to buy a house, or the things that a house needs to be built, right? It's a similar thing where I talk about like with electric vehicles or with nuclear energy. Nuclear energy is a big part of the Green Deal. Currently nuclear energy is 60% of the U.S.'s green energy source. Which is vital to understand. And uranium is the key commodity there. And there's, uranium supply shortages in certain countries. Kazakhstan is one of the biggest plays there. So you can see this overall historical chart. Obviously, this is not inflation adjusted. So you do have to factor in inflation whenever you're looking at a chart like this. Just like, if you denominate the stock market in US dollars, it's up and to the right. But if you denominate the stock market in gold, it's down and to the right. I think a lot of people don't realize that. So not much to say here. We'll hop here on the charts and just look at some key technical analysis levels to just kind of look at from a macro view. So we really haven't seen these lows of 50-cent copper, just like, people buying up gold when it was super, super cheap. These 60-cent copper levels really haven't been seen except, when was it? Right there at 01 in October and March of 1999. I was, I think, still in diapers at those points in times. So maybe you're a bit older and you can let me know if you remember when copper was that cheap and if you regret not buying it. I think it's great to have no regrets, but at the same time, it can be kind of fun to look at this. So if you were watching these charts, luckily I was able to pick up some copper. Oh, I guess not really luckily, it's based on investment research and kind of these different factors that I always watch. That's why I track these charts every single day. But I was able to see that, this low in December, this is a key level of support. So whenever you're looking at technical analysis, right, these key levels we look at here, support and resistance lines, are really just these levels that you look at to average in on. That's kind of what I look at. And then I also use things like Fibonacci extensions, Fibonacci retracements, different things like this. For example, if you were to use these key technical analysis levels, and then you went here, and you did some, sorry about that, some like a fib retracement, for example. Let's just go here. And we were like, okay, we saw this fall here. Where exactly do we want to target? You could have used these levels and, pulled some profit right here, maybe pull a little, maybe this is the target, maybe this is the target. You could also use this swing high, swing low for like there, and go even a bit higher. Like there's multiple ways to do this. Some people debate what's the best way to do it, but it all depends on kind of your kind of macro factors. Obviously, that's a 3-year outlook. So November 2017, moving into where we are now. The point is if you're confused on technical analysis, I literally have a course called Global TA, which breaks down everything as far as technical analysis goes for any asset class. It's built to be able to trade forex, be able to trade crypto, trade stocks, trade commodities, really whatever you're interested in. So overall, and those get released every Sunday, by the way, the Global TA course, absolutely free. No hidden fees or anything like that. It's literally just a video on YouTube where I break down, I go through all the things you need to know for trading, and then we'll kind of do follow-up ones, and those get released pretty much every week. So the point is, we saw this 141% rise right there. These are all these key support levels. I was talking about how I was able to pick up some more right here, because if if you're just zoomed in right here, if you're just looking at the commodities on the yearly time frame, let's say, and you were freaked out because of this crash, and you didn't see, maybe you saw like this. Maybe this is how you're looking at the charts, right? So most people don't zoom out, is my point here, right? So you see this kind of volatility, you see a bounce between these levels, but most people don't draw out these just basic support and resistance levels. And this wicked all the way down, basically touched this level. The key thing you have to remember with support and resistance lines is it's always a range. It's never an exact point. So with support and resistance, you want to make sure, if you're just starting out, use a rectangle. So do it like this. And then as you get more advanced, you don't need the rectangle, because you can basically, when I'm looking at a chart, whenever I see a line like this that I draw out, I know that it's a range. It's not an exact point, right? So it's not really $2.45 in this case. Really, it's like $2.48 to $2.37. That's like, it's more of a range, right? So the point is, you can use technical analysis to kind of average in on these charts. And again, most people, typically, if you're watching this, I would assume maybe you're a commodities trader. I would assume maybe you're looking for a long-term play with copper. That's why at the end of this video, I will talk a little bit more about Margarita, and maybe I'll do an in-depth video on that coming out soon. I don't want to make this video too awful long, but if you have any other questions on the chart for technical analysis, I just wanted to provide these basic support and resistance levels, as well as, I personally think we will see higher highs for copper. I really think we're in this kind of crazy cycle, guys, to be quite honest. We could obviously see it drop down, so you don't want to go all in. Never always apply the tiered investment approach. I always talk about this, and it's in the global investment framework video, is basically never be binary. Never be like, oh, I have $100,000 to invest. I'm going to put $100,000 of it into copper futures. I mean, that's pretty obvious, right? Like, that's literally the worst way to invest. You want to break it down into chunks. You want to use tiered investing. Besides that, if it depends on your risk strategy, your risk, all these different things. If you want to be passive, active, that's kind of for a topic for another video, but moving on. So this is kind of the article on the alternatives to copper. So is this the end of copper? The alternatives to copper cable. So copper has been the conductor of choice for many years in many different types of cabling, and with good reason. It is one of the most conductive of all metals and has been used widely both domestically and commercially. So why are people looking for alternatives to copper cable? Well, there are a number of factors that have left many looking for alternatives, whether fiber optic cables, copper, accompanied by another metal such as aluminum, or no copper with another metal is taking its place. Now, my honest opinion, so yes, aluminum is basically what they go for. To be quite honest, I don't think it's feasible, especially for electric vehicle batteries. For homes, maybe, but you have to think, guys, like, they're using copper for pipes. The majority of copper in homes, it's like copper pipes, things like this. Maybe there's other things that I'm not sure of. The point is to not get too dug down in the weeds and look at, okay, they're using copper in houses, they're using copper in all these different things that we just talked about in this pie chart, which there'll probably be an updated one, in 2020 and 2021. And lastly, let's talk about this, and then kind of the Margarita. So top 10 largest copper mines in 2020. I'm going to read through this list, just some names. You can look into each of these by yourself. But it's very, very important to understand what's going on here, right? The percentage change, the kind of macro trend. So number one is Escon. By the way, if I completely botch these names, again, don't miss the forest through the trees. If I completely botch the name, forgive me. Okay. So Escondida, Chile is 1,156 kilotons. Colahuasi, Chile is 629 kilotons or katons. Let's see. So you just look at the guys, like the top four, 3 out of the 4 are in Chile. So that's this one we're going to be talking about. Again, I'm not selling it. I'm just telling you to look into it. This would be my play. Again, maybe I can do a video if you're curious on like top 5 copper mines or like micro cap companies for coppers, junior miners. But to be quite honest, there really aren't that many new mines. There's really the pool is very limited when you really dig into this space. So that's why it's important to, once you kind of have the research behind you to kind of fuel you, then you can kind of pick and choose based on your kind of macro outlook on this. So, okay, so we talked about the 2 in Chile. So Morseni, USA, I talked about that's in Arizona. El Teniente, Chile. Buena Vista, Mexico. So in the top 6, like I said, 4 out of the 6 in Chile. Chuquicamata, Chile, 401 kilotons. KGHM Mining Hub in Poland, 393 kilotons. We have one in Peru that's doing 378 kilotons. Cerro Verde, Peru, 372 kilotons. Then Indonesia, 367 kilotons. I think this is the one where this article may have mentioned it. Yeah, so Grasberg in Indonesia. So that's interesting that they have it ranked as, maybe they're ranking it as the second largest copper mine, it based off another metric. It always depends when you're making these top 10 lists. What metric are you going off of, right? So if I just say, if someone just comes out and they go, okay, top 10 gold mining stocks. Well, what top 10 on what? Is it just top 10 on your opinion, or is it top 10 on, the gold that's produced? What top 10 what? So that's kind of the point. That's kind of one of the fallacies, I guess, with, clickbaits and things like this. So I try and keep the channel as clickbait less as possible and just try and focus on value. So point is, if you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe. If you enjoyed it so far, hit the notification bell. We will wrap things up with Margarita, but just wanted to reiterate, make sure to check out all the links down below in the description. Let's wrap it up with this. So the Margarita is an iron oxide, copper, and gold IOCG project. Is located in Chile, 60 kilometers north of the city of Copiapó, with excellent access to infrastructure. The property is located within the prolific coastal caldera belt that hosts the world-class Candelaria in Monteverde IOCG mines. So remember, IOCG is iron oxide, copper, gold mines. Okay, so porphyry and skarn deposits such as Santo Domingo and Inca de Oro. So the Margarita project is comprised approximately of 1,045 hectares and is flanked by secondary copper oxide mineralized on the southwest boundary of the property. The copper oxide mineralization is defined by 39 drill holes, totaling 3,984 meters, and represents an exploration target of approximately 20 to 35 million tons. So that's about 0.2 to 0.5% copper. The presence of oxide mineralization is important as it demonstrates the potential for the primary copper sulfide source to occur within the Margarita. So guys, the main point here, if all of this is confusing you, I can do another video on this, breaking this down, because I have done a lot of research into this video. I also have videos on, natural resource investing, kind of a beginner's guide. The point is, they're planning to go live with this. I think it's near like August or something, for Torq Resources. I can't remember exactly when they're planning to tap into these, but it's all kind of speculation on a mining project, especially if you look at junior miners with a lower market cap. Do your own research. These are the tickers up here. So it trades on the Canadian stock market, and it trades on, you can trade it like OTC, over the counter, just at TRBMF. I will have this link down below in the description. But again, the point is when you're researching a mine and it hasn't found the actual commodity they're looking for yet, it's high risk, high reward. Just like in the crypto space, you're looking for an altcoin, it's high risk, high reward. You can't just go with Bitcoin. So like in the commodity space, you could just buy gold or you could just buy silver. I would say those are very, very safe bets. If you buy the physical silver or gold bullion, you don't buy collectibles, you literally just buy physical silver or gold bullion. Or let's say you're getting into a lot of these commodity stocks, you're going to be pretty safe. But if you're getting into something like a junior mining stock, it's a little bit higher risk, high reward. You have to do your own research. You have to have proper risk management strategies in place. Keep in mind, I'm not a financial advisor. this video is for educational purposes. I hope you understand that by this point. But just to wrap up the video, I personally think, copper could see a lot higher highs. Based on all the different factors we talked about, as well as the extensive research that I've done into copper and some of these key commodities for electric vehicles that kind of overlap with 5G technology, with just kind of key infrastructure, things that we really need to build, again, like build the world, basically, build the future of the world. You need these commodities. There aren't known replacements now. Yes, you can always speculate on, space mining, asteroid mining, all these different things. But I think as far as copper goes, the thesis is there, the narrative is there. I'm bullish copper. Let me know in the comments what you think. Even though we're at this top, I'm not personally buying copper futures right now. I did pick up some miners here. I have averaged out a little bit. I'm still holding some miners. Just to clarify, I'm not moving them. I'm not going to, there's no really way to pump and dump based on the size of this channel. And the point is, my dog here wants to go for a walk. So I'm going to wrap this up. So that's all for today's video. If you enjoyed it, like, subscribe button, all, invest global, and until next time.